Welcome back to the Fire Drill. This Sunday, not a lot of golf going on, but we still knocked out an hour-long podcast. It goes on derailments, which I love, which I really love. But it started, there's serious, there's funny. We obviously started with a match, Tiger Woods, Jordan, Charles Barkley, and what he adds. Michael didn't even know the match had happened. But he adds a lot to it, too, about his thoughts about Tiger Woods' place in the game and those kind of things. We talk about Grant Wahl. Alan talked to him before he went to the World Cup for about an hour about a bunch of things, and they had worked together a long time, all three of them at Sports Illustrated, and his place in the journalistic world, and just how sad it all is. And then we talked about, we went on a tangent about the movie Straight Out of Compton, and I'm not going to add anything to it except to just, I promise, it's towards the end. I promise it is worth the time to stay. Alan and Michael went to the movie, and that's all I'm going to add, because the details of it, of them going, is just well worth the wait. It's almost nothing to do with golf, except that we tie it into Alan and Phil Mickelson, which I think was a great comparison. It really is in a very microcosmic look into what it is to be a journalist sending out a story that you know is going to kind of disrupt the golf world. Before we send it off, I want to do a few things. First of all, our sponsors, Par Points. Go make Par. Download the app. It's a great way to keep scoring. It's awesome. You should try it. Once you try it, you'll be hooked. Par Points app, Android or Apple. Go get it. And then Dormy Workshop, awesome club covers. I just have to say artisanal now, because I get tweets about using the words artisanal now. So I have to use it. Artisanal club covers, putter covers, really awesome. Go check them out. And then before we get into the pod, a couple of house cleaning things that we have to take care of. Need a Fourth is an awesome new podcast. Alan, Michael, Jeff Ogilvy, and a mystery guest every week, sponsored by Echo. They have a great contest going on with Link Soul. Go to our YouTube page, comment on the last Need a Fourth, and be entered in a chance to win $250 gift card from Link Soul. Brandel Chambly was the last guest. It was very good, very different side of Brandel that a lot of people haven't seen. It's different than the personality you see on TV. It was very cool. Him and Jeff talking about the U.S. Open, really, really interesting. Go there, check out our YouTube page. Lots of stuff besides the stuff I just mentioned. So subscribe there. Do that stuff. It helps us out. There's Alpina stuff. There's there'll be grind episodes on there. There's Journeys, Need a Fourth, podcast. This podcast is on there. Jake's giving me the, you got to cut this out. It's time to go. He's giving me the high sign. But please do all those things. It helps support what we're doing at Fire Pit. Thanks for listening. Without further ado, here's the three of us talking golf, mostly.
Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa came early with Tiger Woods playing in the match. It was under the lights. It was on made for TV. What did you guys think of this spectacle?
Did not know it was played until you just said it.
This is the rigorous preparation that we like for this podcast.
Yeah, that is so great.
Ryan, did you watch it?
That is amazing. That is amazing.
Does he not need to play in the father-son tournament first? What's the order here?
That's on deck. This coming week, we'll Charlie Woods, the biggest star in golf by my calculations, will make his annual appearance.
So true.
Here's
my take on it. I also did not know it was on in the morning. I knew it was coming up, but I didn't know it was yesterday. But I said to my wife as we were watching it, would I make any sort of special plans, cancel anything to watch it? Of course not. But was it fine TV last night on a Saturday night where there's no college football or anything? Yeah, it was fine. It was great. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean,
It was something
you just
to
have
watch.
to have,
What else am I going to watch? Wheel of Fortune?
you have to have,
What time did it come on for we East Coast viewers?
7
8 o'clock
They
East
teed
Coast?
it up at 7, Michael. It was like an hour long pre them, and then an hour. And obviously, Tiger played pretty terrible. It was. I mean, it had moments. Charles Barkley is by far the best part of the match. It's every time. He's hilarious.
The JT Barkley repartee, a little forced, but undeniably funny in spots. Like, he had one great line. He's like, the next match is going to be Charles versus a plate of cheese fries. Like that was legit laugh out loud funny. And so, I mean, obviously Tiger was the focus, especially after he pulled out of the World Challenge. And I thought it was weird. You know, he said he hadn't touched a club for 2.5 weeks. I mean, we know that Tiger is a man of immense pride. And even though this has no meaning, he's still on very graphic public display. And I think it tells you how much he's fighting his body if he didn't prepare at all. I mean, and his play was very scratchy, especially the first 5 or 6 holes. And then he kind of found it a little bit and hit some shots. But that to me is a red flag, you know, in this ongoing question, like how much golf is Tiger Woods going to play? I mean, prime time national audience, he didn't even hit a small bucket. So
did he say why he had not hit balls before?
I'm sure. I mean, I'm just assuming it's the plantar fasciitis, which knocked him out of the World Challenge. But
no, he said, Alan. He said what knocked him out of the World Challenge was his inability to walk. I thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that might have been a little hyperbolic what he said in the Hero World Challenge press conference, like. Because he was riding a cart last night. He could ride a cart from his front door to his practice facility in his backyard. Like, if the foot really didn't cause him any discomfort, why didn't he hit some balls? It doesn't track. As Tiger talking about his body and his injuries often is confounding and mysterious and contradictory. I think this is another example. Because like if walking is the issue, you can certainly hit some balls on the range without doing much walking. So I don't know. That was a little mysterious.
And, you know, I've said it, and maybe you guys don't have the same feelings. Maybe you do. But yesterday, like, Tiger is, at least right now, has become a ceremonial golfer, at least in the short term. Hopefully not in long term, but right now he has. And I don't know if I said it on this podcast or a different one, but like we used to go to the senior event near us when I was a kid, and my dad would always want to go watch Arnie, right? And Jack, and they both were like well past their prime by that time. And I always was like, what the hell is he doing? Like, who wants to go watch, you know, a guy shoot 76 on a pretty relatively easy golf course? And now I get it. Like, there was some like, yeah, I just like to watch Tiger play golf. Now, of course, I wish he would have played better. But I just like to see him out there. Obviously, I wish he was better than, who cares about yesterday? But just in general, I hope he can tee it up again. But it makes me think of the fact that he was important to, that we were lucky to have him in the time that I grew up watching golf.
I think that British Open was a big setback for him because I think he prepared really hard for it. And I swallowed the Kool-Aid, drank the Kool-Aid and believed the hype. I thought he'd go out there and shoot 4 good scores. And of course, when he didn't, it just made you look at Tiger. You know, when that was over, it made you look at Tiger differently.
To your comment, Ryan, Andy North told me a great story about Arnold Palmer that I can't remember the year of the tournament, but Arnold was saying in his 60s now. He's well beyond contending on the senior tour, but he was playing really well at this senior event. And I guess the second round, you know, the penultimate round, he comes to the 18th hole, island green, shallow green. It's an automatic layup for everyone. You can't hold it with anything more than about a 9-iron. Arnie hits a good drive and he pulls out like his 3-wood, and the crowd murmurs and gets excited, and he like rips one, of course, bounces over the green, drops one, hits like 3 in the water. And as North told it, like Arnie was on the edge of contention. You know, if he makes a birdie there, he's like in 10th place or something. He's got a chance. It'd be huge for TV. And everyone's befuddled. You know, he makes like a 12 or something. And afterwards, off air, because Andy North was commenting, he's like, Arnie, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
And Palmer goes, those people came to see Arnold Palmer, and I gave them Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, it's pretty great. That's pretty great.
It was like I picture like Clint Eastwood, with a little sneer and the hat pulled low. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's funny, but it's also it's insightful. Like there's just Arnie had a role to play, and he embraced it. Jack Nicklaus was more ambivalent about being a quote unquote ceremonial golfer. He always said he'd never be one, but then he did. And he's still hitting the first tee at the Masters. Like he's actually grown comfortable with that. The question for Tiger is, will he embrace that role? And what is it going to look like? Or does he have, so much pride and he still sticks to that? I'm not going to tee it up if I can't win kind of ethos. Like, what are we going to see from Tiger going forward? That's a big question.
Yeah, agreed. Yesterday, for the first time, I felt like he was really a ceremonial golfer. I mean, it wasn't good golf. He was obviously in a lot of discomfort, and I just hope it's the planner stuff, and he can get back to. I mean, we've talked about it last week. It's just a couple of times, one more time in his career, even just be around, even near, so we can discuss whether it will ever happen again.
As Nicholas says, never, ever, 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 ever count out this Tiger Woods. But I think he must know on some level that when he won that Masters in 2019, it was a gift. He played okay, really. And he squeezed one out. And there's not going to be another one.
No, that's depressing, but probably accurate. And right, that was, we kind of thought the 2019 Masters, that was it. Like that was the gift. But then you get greedy. Like, well, if he did it, then he could do it again. And, if he gets a firm, fast links course and he gets a good side of the draw and you can talk yourself into all kinds of stuff. But after smashing up his foot, I mean, it was
Alan, I thought you were going to say after smashing up that car. I mean,
yeah, that's what I was. Why said his
you
foot.
Were saying that. I see.
Yeah. That changed.
He drove up the side of the road, and we've been down this road before. By his own admission, his life changed that day.
Yeah. Well, that was a morbidly funny moment in the match because Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth were wearing shorts, so it led to the inevitable talk about calf muscles. And Tiger's like, I got a good calf. Singular. It was pretty funny.
It was good.
It went over Jordan Spieth and a few other people's heads in the moment, but it was funny. But yeah, that's the reality. No one ever talks about his back anymore. Like that's what we thought was going to end Tiger's
back
career.
Is the good part of his body. Yeah.
That's the one functional part of his body, the fused spine.
How are you going to drive the golf ball anywhere with one good calf?
He's driving it pretty well, though. His ball speed was like up there with those guys yesterday.
Was it really?
Yeah. No, he's got some of his speed back, and he'd mentioned that in the Bahamas that he's gotten some speed back, and he's not going to have the ball speed of Rory McIlroy, but he was up there with Spieth, and even threatened JT a few times. Like he's so physically strong in the upper body that it's like he could just jerk the club down through the hitting area with some speed, but it's not the most efficient or possibly repeatable action, but he's making it work. But anyway, yeah.
Who won the thing?
It wasn't Tiger. It wasn't
close.
It wasn't close. Tiger
is it straight better ball for the 12 holes?
No, yeah. One club challenge.
Yeah, the one club challenge. They played one hole and everyone got to choose which club and. It was chaos. It was anarchy. It was fun. Guys were hitting the ball in crazy places, trying to bend it. Tiger, I think he played down the wrong fairway on purpose. I'm not even sure.
I thought it was going to be ridiculous, and then it turned out to be like really fun. I was like,
it was cool.
This is stupid.
Chaos in a good way. It was totally fun.
Yeah. Agreed. And so, Michael, when they played, you couldn't JT and Justin went first, and they got to choose their clubs, and you couldn't choose the clubs that they chose. So, like, those clubs were, everyone had to use a different club.
Yeah. Sounds too gimmicky for me. But quick aside, a 4-club tournament on the PGA Tour would be super cool.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole point of it. Like, Thomas made a really good par with his 5-wood to win the hole, and that was cool. So
four clubs and an opportunity for Jones Bag. Are they a sponsor of ours, Jones Golf Bags?
They should be, but not yet.
Well, perhaps they will become one I'm a user. But Jones bag, 4 clubs. What clubs are they going to be? And really manufacture shots for 4 straight days. That would be really cool to see.
That would be cool.
What would be your 4 clubs?
Well, I play one every year, so now it's a very short course. But driver, 6-iron, sandwich, putter, because I can hood that 6 and turn it into a 4.
Yeah, I would go driver, putter for sure. Probably wedge, and then
you got to have I would go 8-iron maybe
8. But then I was almost going to say driver, hybrid, like 7-iron putter, just because you can use a hybrid anything from 170 to 210.
Yeah.
You're gonna if you're in the wrong trap, you're gonna have a hard time getting out with the 7-iron.
That's true.
Unless you want to go.
Yeah, you got to have a wedge of some sort. I mean,
I guess you got to have a wedge. That's fun. That's a fun conversation.
Yeah, and by the way, and it would have been cool if Jay Monahan would have said, we're going to spice things up here. We're going to have a pro-am event, or not a pro-am. We're going to have a mixed team event. We're going to have a 4-club event. We're going to have another kind of team event. There was an opportunity there to do more than just bring in money. How about bring in fans? I know we've talked about this before, but really the starting point for this whole reconfiguration of what the PGA Tour should be began with holding on to the players, making sure they get paid. But it should have begun with us. What's going to make us watch? If it began with us watching, the money would come.
That's very true. Well, what were you going to say, Ryan?
Has nothing to do with that. I have to know. Well, I mean, you weren't here for the Michael lighting conversation. Michael's lighting is different every week and wonderful this week. I don't know what it is. It's like Chris, he's holding a flashlight, or we're not sure. But second of all, where's the baseball, Michael? I need the story on the baseball that you're holding.
Well, just a ball.
I don't know. Have I told this story on Michael and I have spent a lot of time together, and we can we'll talk about it later of why. But of lately, on the phone, in cars, at hotels, and I'm driving.
We
with
played Gold Hollow as well.
Yeah, Gold Hollow. We're driving from Alpena to Cleveland, and I'm with one of the greatest writers of our time.
We're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore.
Millions of he's interviewed, talked to, knows everybody. And I say, Michael, what's the piece that you love the most? Just an article, not a book or anything. And I was like, oh, this is going to be about Obama or Trump or a million other people. And he says, I once went and wrote an article about the Cincinnati Reds, and they were 40 games out. And I went to write about, what professionalism meant and why they're still there. And I was like, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. And I'm sitting on the edge of my seat and going oh, there's going to be a guy who, has cancer and he won the All-Star game and, it's going to be an amazing story. And I go, yeah, what happened? And he's like, no, that's the story. And I was like, what?
Literally nothing happened.
Nothing. Yeah, that's what happened. Nothing. And I was like, and then I couldn't find it. And Michael sent it to me. It's a great article. It's just of all the stories that he's written, books, the people he's met. It was just the last.
Well, we were in Cleveland. That may have sponsored. You're nice. You're nice to remember even the conversation run. Alan, let's make a quick nod to our former. This is inadequate, but Alan and I worked for years with a wonderful colleague named Grant Wahl. Many of you would know that. Anybody who follows soccer would know the name. I don't even know how to describe what he is. What Roger Angel was to baseball and what Herb Wind was to golf, Grant Wahl was to soccer writing. And 48 or 9, he died in Qatar, covering the World Cup. Just a tragic loss for his family and great person.
Yeah, Grant. I mean, we came up together at SI. I mean, I think we were hired the same year and same age.
So he came in 96.
Yeah. You too, Michael. I mean, you arrived at 95, right? And,
right.
But, Grant and I were the same age and we kind of progressed more or less at the same time. And we were never super close, but there was always he was a writing nerd like I am. So we would talk about stories and talk about journalism, and just a wonderful human being, just so kind and generous and a tremendous talent. I mean, he did college basketball for 5 or 7 years before he did soccer, and he was an incredible college basketball writer. But his first love was soccer, and that's where he had this international influence. And I still can't believe it, because right before he left for the World Cup, I talked to him on the phone for at least 45 minutes.
Wow. This year you did?
A month ago, if that.
Wow.
Well, because Grant, he spent the last 3 years, he left SI, and he was really a pioneer of, in some ways, in the sports writing world for Substack. He was one of the first kind of blue chip sports writers to go to Substack, and he'd done extremely well growing that audience. And so as here at the Fire Pit Collective, as we've talked about different ways to reach readers, we've had conversations with Substack. So I wanted Grant's take on it. And of course, turned into a wide ranging conversation about the old days at SI and various colleagues and what we're doing here at the collective. And he's a very inquisitive, very thoughtful dude. So we both were like, oh, it's a busy day. I got maybe 15 minutes, and we just kept going. It was really fun. And all of it is so stunning, up to including the fact, like, he was tweeting just, minutes before he collapsed. And then that was like an emotional day. And I got on this text thread with old SI folks, and I was reading some of the coverage, and then I was curious what was happening on social media. I went to Instagram, and there's Grant's Instagram story pops up. He had just been putting out videos and stuff. I mean, I think it said 8 hours earlier, and now he was gone. It was like so surreal. It was like having a ghost in your phone, and still trying to process the whole thing, really.
Yeah, I did not realize his wife was such an accomplished medical doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Celine Grounder. So she's been an infectious disease expert for many years, and in fact, Grant did some great stories with Bill Walton. And one time I was talking to Bill Walton because I was doing a UCLA USC basketball story, and he was just happy to be in the arena. And that was when I was at Sports Illustrated. He's like, "Oh, do you know Grant?" I said, "Of course I know Grant." He's like, "Grant's okay, but his wife's amazing. Like, she's like changing the world." And he went on this whole, Bill Walton-esque riff. And so, yeah, when COVID happened, Celine, she became a contributor on CNN and was incredibly well spoken. She's on Biden's advisory council. Like, she's become a very important voice in all of this. And Grant was so proud of her, and it was really cute to hear him talk about her, because all three of us probably know, like, we have public jobs and people get jolly about what we do. And so whatever your significant other accomplishes in life, like, we can all agree what Ryan's wife's work as a nurse was far more important than what we do. And like, I always say, my only job is to give people something to read while they're on the throne. Like, you got to have some perspective. But yeah, I'm sure people are more excited about Ryan's job than about Mrs. Monday's contributions to society. And so, but it was cute for Grant, because he'd always been this acclaimed writer, and all of a sudden his wife is like famous, and instead of him being whatever competitive about it, he was just so proud of her, and that was a sweet element to their whole story. And of course, it's part of the tragedy for they didn't get to say goodbye.
How nice for you, on a very quiet kind of way, to at least have a chance to have that one conversation so recently.
Yeah.
What was the deal with him leaving SI?
Well, it was just, as you know, Michael, when we left, it was kind of similar timing. They were very much in a cost-cutting mode, and just, it was like every year lose 10% of the staff kind of thing. And so,
yeah.
And so
I read, I don't know, you guys would know better than I, obviously, but I read that he spoke out about SI cutting salaries during COVID and was gone soon after that. So,
yeah. Well, so we're getting deep in the weeds here, but yeah, it got messy, because he wound up suing Sports Illustrated because some of their leadership had said some things about him in the press, and he won this settlement. So he actually came back and did a victory lap at SI and did, I think the deal was, as part of the settlement, he wrote a few more long form pieces. And so Grant got kind of a curtain call at Sports Illustrated, which was cool. But he was a very passionate guy. Like, he wore his heart on his sleeve, and I'm sure everyone.
He wore his heart on his sleeve, and he wore the Gay Pride T-shirt into the stadium there. Those who followed his life near the end would know about that. Just an extremely principled, fine person. And as I would have known him, and Alan, tell me if I have this wrong, just a paragon of fitness, just slender.
So this is an interesting undercurrent to all of this. Grant's brother went on social media and said, and so Grant had worn to the first game it's a rainbow T-shirt that had a soccer ball, and he got detained by security because we all know Qatar is not really an open society that's tolerant of other people's points of views and lifestyles and whatever. And then Grant had also written extensively about the horrible conditions of the migrant workers who were used to build all the soccer stadiums over there. And when his last post was about that, because I guess a worker had died at a stadium. And so Grant's brother, Eric, said, he thought that Grant had been murdered essentially, and it was not a natural causes, which I hope that's not true. That would be really dark. I mean, Grant had been having some health issues over there. He thought he had bronchitis or whatever. So I don't know about all that, but I didn't go to the Live event in Saudi Arabia, even though I wanted to, but various people in my life, including our colleague Matt Janelle and others, felt strongly I shouldn't go because, I've been in sort of the front lines of all this Live stuff and the Mickelson quotes and all of it. And I always felt like, oh, that's totally overblown. But, I talked to some international businessmen types who've done a lot of work in Saudi Arabia. And my whole point was Live Golf doesn't want anything to happen to me. That would make them look terrible. The MBS doesn't want, he's the host of this thing. I'm probably the safest person in Saudi Arabia, but these guys who I spoke to have been over there a lot said, well, there's actually these elements within the country that are working against MBS, and they're always looking for good targets to create. It's like this rogue element. You're the state apparatus wants you to be okay, but you can't account for fanatics and others with agendas. And so it was like low probability, high outcomes. So I wound up not making the trip. There's other reasons too, scheduling and everything else, but. So that just gave me a little shudder, what Grant's brother put out there publicly. If in some way there was any kind of foul play because of what he had typed, it's like, we'll never know the truth. We'll never know that. And it was just like, for me, it had some resonance because I ultimately elected not to make a trip over to that part of the world. And so anyway.
Yeah. Was Walton a golfer, Alan?
No, he would actually, we got to get him. We got to hook him up with Michael Murphy. Like I could see Bill Walton getting into the whole essence of the spiritual side of golf, which some believe in and embrace, and others are not so into, which is fine. But they'd be fellow travelers for sure. And but to my knowledge, I don't think he's ever touched a club.
Yeah. He, you remember John Papanek? You would have known John Papanek, I'm sure, Alan.
Maybe
he was gone by the time you arrived.
Yeah, former managing editor at Sports Illustrated. He was gone before I got there, but I did meet him at was it Peter Carey's retirement? Some function where a bunch of old SI folks got together. So I met him. I know of him. What's your story?
Well, he used to tell a funny story about he was going to ghostwrite Walton's memoir. And he told John about how he grew up without a TV. And Walton's like, wow, you grew up without a TV? And Walton's like, yeah, we had no TV in our house. And then Papanek is having a meal or something with Walton's mother. And John says something like, so what's the deal? You guys didn't have a TV growing up? By the way, Ryan French did not have a TV growing up for a large number of years, long period of time. And Mrs. Walton says, is John still telling that story? Of course we had a TV. So then John goes back to Walton and says, your mom says you had a TV. And to make a long story short, Walton's like, this is not going to work out if you're actually going to fact check me.
Yeah, that's great.
Just for the record, I actually didn't have a TV, and it's been fact checked with both. Well, one parent can't really fact check, but one parent has, in fact, fact checked the fact that
I've tried to fact check it. The dispute is whether it died. It definitely died during the Stanley Cup playoffs. The question is, was it in the final or in the game preceding the final?
Yes.
I'm sure Ryan, all the controversial fact checking, Ryan's sending you to his dad at this point. He's like, check it with my dad.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
guy's got
like,
Alzheimer's. I can't check it with
And keep your pants on, dude.
Well, okay, so that's from a story that was told before we were taping. But Ryan, you did write a beautiful bittersweet piece for firepitcollective.com this week about your father's ongoing battle with dementia, which is very heart-wrenching, and all of us can relate to my
But on that basis, let me just explain my joke without being too graphic.
Yes,
Ryan's dad, whom I've met, who's a great guy, and by the way, looks so fit, he's going to go another 30 years. If he doesn't want to move, he's come up with a very effective way of like, back off.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to move this guy away from where he wants to be.
Yeah, Ryan, so my dad
finish the story.
My dad was having a bad day, and when he has a bad day, we often take him to my house just to like take the stress off my mother. And he's like, I don't want to go, and I said, well, we have to go. And he pulled down his pants, underwear and everything, and it was highly effective. I mean, it was a highly effective way to not move anywhere. So, I mean, well done, Dad. Yeah.
For those who don't know, we'll save this for another time. But Ryan and his dad had a tradition when Ryan was much younger of they would go, as many families go on camping trips, they would go on caddy camping trips, and they would pitch tent and caddy in low level events. And a lot of what Ryan does today professionally, writing about dreamers in the game and Monday qualifiers and the rest, come from his experiences with these caddy camping trips with his dad. But let's save that for another time, if that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and Ryan's written about that beautifully, which is also on our website. His origin story, when the early days of the fire pit. Well, so I wanted to ask you about this, Ryan, since this ostensibly is a golf podcast. We've gotten very far afield, which is fine. That's part of the charm of these fire drills. But I missed it when it came out. But I was floating on PGAtour.com. Not sure why. And this announcement about the expanded pathway, the Japan Tour, the top 3 finishers are now going to be exempt onto the Euro Tour. And then the top 10 finishers on the Euro Tour, as we know, are going to be exempt on the PGA Tour. And so there is this, they have formalized this new way to reach the PGA Tour. Do you think there's any grinders in your orbit who'll be like, you know what, I'm going to go play Japan. I'm going to finish top 3. Then I'm going to go play Europe. I'm going to finish top 10. And that's the easiest way to get a tour card. Like, is that a viable route?
Yeah. I mean, more and more guys have gone to Japan Tour Q School even before this announcement. So if you're a pro golfer in the grinder mode and you don't have status, math doesn't ever add up, or you would never be at a Monday qualifier, right? Like, it just doesn't. Like, reality is you're probably not going to get through. So yes, 100% there'll be players. Like, the odds of you going to Japan, playing in a country you don't know very well, finishing top 3, then going to Europe, a country you don't know, but 100% there'll be a ton of players that do it. And that will be the carrot that makes them go like, oh, Japan, I would have never gone before, but now I can get to the European Tour. And so there I go. And I always wonder is a lot of the guys who go to Japan, a lot of Australians go there. Brian Watts is probably the most famous American that absolutely dominated in Japan for a long time. They don't want to leave. So it'll be really interesting to see what the 3, like, it's a relatively short schedule. It's very good money. It's obviously a smaller country, so travel isn't difficult. There's a lot of good things going for the Japan Tour. A lot of guys who go there don't want to leave. They are just very content playing 20 times a year in a very small country for good money and going home. The foreign players that go over there, and that's it.
So I remember our colleague Tom Verducci at Sports Illustrated went over and did a Brian Watts feature. He was already in Japan for, Verducci, of course, is on the Mount Rushmore of baseball writers, and he was doing a baseball story, but it was like, hey, if you're there, this is the early days of Golf Plus. I think this was 94, could have been 95, but and so he did this story on Brian Watts, who had tremendous success over there. But my takeaway, and I haven't read the story now in a quarter century, but it seemed like a very kind of lonely life. Like he did not integrate into the tour at all. He was playing golf and he's in his hotel room and didn't learn the language, didn't eat the food, was, subsisting on McDonald's and whatever else he could get. And so that's an underrated aspect. Like, golf talent travels. We know that, but there's plenty of guys who didn't feel comfortable in the U.S., whether it was Seve Ballesteros or Angel Cabrera or, many others, and they didn't play their best over here. And it flows both ways. Just because you're a really talented American golfer, not only there's the cultural stuff, there's the golf courses are different over there. The grasses are different, like all of it. So
I've done stats on Brian Watts because
let's hear it.
I think I've told Michael this story is one of my moments of like how good pro golfers are. I was in high school and Brian Watts was behind this tree at the Buick Open in Flint. And my dad and I were standing behind him. Obviously no one knew who Brian Watts was, so there was no fans around. And there's like a low-hanging tree in front of him. And I was like, well, is he going to hook it? Is he going to slice it? And no, he just hit a stinger right under it and like ran it up, on the front of the green. And I was like, oh, that's very, these guys are a different breed. Okay, here's my stat that I tweeted in October 20th, 2020. Anytime I'm on the Japan Tour site, it reminds me of American Brian Watts' career there. From 1993 to 1998, he had 12 wins, 12 runner-ups, and 63 top 10s. In just 124 events.
It's like Tiger-esque, yeah.
It is. It's ridiculous.
And he lost in a playoff in a British Open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He made that. He made a great run.
I'm guessing that's when Verducci wrote about him.
Could have been, yeah. I'd have to look that up, but and
that's really where he came. And when he came back here, and he did okay here. I mean, never did anything great, but kept his card a few times for sure.
Yeah.
You know who else in that same vein? Todd Hamilton played overseas for years.
Yeah.
Played Japan,
Scott Dunlop.
played the world.
I mean, he was another one. That was John Garrity. He used to love writing about Scott Dunlop. I mean, but of course I would have, and you would know better, Ryan. I mean, I'm sure the competition and the depth is gotten, it's certainly become, more real and more cutthroat on every tour. So of course it's going to happen in Japan. But I do remember there was sort of these protectionist rules. It was hard in those days in the 90s to get on the Japan tour if you were not Japanese. How much has it opened up since then?
Not a ton. I think there are still rules in place that only X amount of foreign players can be in a field at a time. I'll have to confirm that. But for a long time, there was only like X amount of players that could be outside of Japan. So a lot of players don't get from that standpoint. Chan Kim was an All-American at Arizona State, has won a bunch on the Japan tour and got through Q School this year. He was like top 100 player in the world. I think he had like a top 25 in the PGA even last year, and got his Korn Ferry status. So it's always interesting to see. Like he's obviously does very well on the Japan tour. It'll be interesting to see what he does on the Korn Ferry Tour. And I love smokers, and Chan Kim is a legendary smoker. That dude sucks down the vape pen. I mean, sucks it down.
Well, there's a communal aspect. Like the smokers, like they stick together. They're always looking for a freaking match or a lighter. Yeah. There just seems like there's more of a hang. But so what's interesting, I have teenage kids, and the vape pens are everywhere, and I'm always lecturing them. And one thing I've picked up from them is they would never, no one their age would ever smoke a cigarette. They're appalled by the idea of cigarettes. Like they're dirty, they taste bad, your hair smells. Like the vape pens are one thing, which I don't support. I'd like to go on record with that. But the America's youth is not down for cigarettes. They're just like, so I guess that's progress, right? I mean, as I understand it, it's the smoking that causes the cancer. The vape pens reduce that drastically. So maybe this is some sort of progress, but now everyone's getting hooked on vape pens. I don't know.
I think if you ask Rory McIlroy what's the most significant development in his life in, let's say, the past 10 years, I'm sure he would cite his marriage and the birth of his daughter, first and second. But I would guess, I don't know this, but I would guess he would cite third as his father's decision to quit smoking. His father was a barman, and like a lot of bar people in all countries, but especially in Ireland and Northern Ireland, was a heavy smoker, and he looks great, Jerry McElroy. And I know, we've talked about Jerry, and I've talked about a little bit about what an improvement in his life. The other day, I was laughed out of a room. We were talking about societal developments, in our lifetime. I once asked my father-in-law, "What's the greatest invention of your lifetime?" He was witty in a dry way, and he said, "The automatic garage door opener." Great answer. But I would say, these over any flight, now, I don't know if you guys remember this, but of course there used to be smoking sections in planes, and it was a joke because it's not like there was a partition. The smoke just moved all over your clothes. Just especially on an overseas flight, you're on the plane for 8 hours. You just stank by the time you came off. So anyway, so in the tradition of my father-in-law and his overhead garage door opener, I cited smoke-free plane travel. And I was laughed out of the room, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Quickly, I like people are leaving Alan's house at this point, so maybe it's time to wrap up. But quickly, next week I will be playing on Friday. I'll be playing Shadow Creek, the very exclusive and
Cool,
nice Shadow Creek. And thank you, Mark Baldwin, for getting a sponsorship that you now have to give to your friends, because you have credit and you can't use it all.
Ryan, is it actually exclusive, or is it more the case of if you pay enough money at one of the casinos, you can get on it?
Yeah, probably that.
Yeah, it's the latter, but still that'll be a cool experience. I've never played Shadow Creek. I mean, it's so man-made. I mean,
yes.
I was there for match 1. Have you been, Alan?
I've never been on the grounds. I've seen all the photos.
It's a good golf course. I mean, for me, that's a shocker to admit.
That is.
But if you didn't know where you were and you just saw the golf course, wow, this place is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, Arnold Palmer never won a major after he quit smoking. So I think we should just for our friends in the industry, we should offer a little balance to this conversation. I'm kidding.
I kind of know what Ryan's talking about, because it's definitely one of the cool sites from one of Crenshaw's wins at Augusta. I think he's going down 10, and he's cupping the cigarette.
The cup, yeah.
Like nobody can see him.
I know, the cup.
And we see the smoke coming up out of your hand.
I always wonder if any golfer ever ended their career by singeing their fingers trying to cup a cigarette.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
Of course, back in the day, the caddies would put the cigarette up to see which way the wind was blowing.
Yeah, there you go. That's old school.
Yeah, back to Chan Kim. He does the same thing. He holds his vape pen, like this, and then takes it away. And then this. All I know about vape pens is it produces a massive amount of smoke blowing out, and it's like he just blows this humongous cloud out, and you're like, "Hey, Chan, you might as well just you don't have to hide the vape pen, because it's kind of your cover's blown after you."
Ryan, does he do that? What tours does he do that on?
Any two. I the first time I saw him, and I had heard about it, but the first time I saw him was at a Monday qualifier for the waste management.
So can you smoke a vape pen on a PGA Tour event then?
I mean, he was. I don't know. Sorry, Chan, if you're getting suspended for that.
I don't think smoke is the right verb, Michael. I think you could hit the vape pen.
Yeah, that's what the kids say.
That's what the kids say. I'm just trying to help. If you're trying to light the vape pen, the plastic will melt. It'll be a mess.
It's cartridges. It's cartridges, Michael. If you believe that, it's it's killing everyone.
The Fire Drill podcast, sponsored by Juul. But anyway,
as we all hit our vape pen.
Okay, I think it's time to end this podcast. But
speaking of Ryan's family, here's some really good reading, and I'm not being facetious.
My God.
It's called Notes from the North Country, and the writer is O.B. Eustace. O.B. Eustace is Ryan's maternal grandfather. I don't know if the camera will pick up on this.
Move it to your right. There
it is. There's Gramps.
But you see
I love it.
Similarity.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's eerie, actually.
This O.B. Eustace is like, Thoreau meets E.B. White. I mean, it's really clean, tight, no profanity. But the writing gene is the writing gene. Got to add one thing. And then Ryan had an aunt, his Obi Eustace's daughter, and she could write her bottom off, if I may use that word.
Anyway, all right. Well, this has been a fire drill podcast like few others, but admittedly, it was a slow week in golf. Maybe we'll come back. Well, next week we'll have the father-son and more Tiger and Charlie and everything else to kick around. And I actually like the father-son. Beyond that aspect, it's cool to see all these kids, and how much it means to them. Like I was talking to Stuart Sink, and he's playing with his son, and they're treating it like the fifth major. Man, it means a lot to them. I think it's really cute, and so that's a good one. But maybe we'll do something thematic for the ensuing weeks. Will be the last fire drill of the year. But until then, the listeners are going to just have to go on this journey with us to the unexpected places this podcast goes. Any parting thoughts? Yeah,
that was great. I mean, I love derailments. And this was a full-blown derailment. Outside of the first 8 minutes, I don't think we talked about golf, and it's great, and I love it. I love to listen to you guys, and that was one. I love this movie.
One last story before we go, because Michael and we both love the movies, and we were at. Let's see, we were in Milwaukee, so it was one of the PGA championships at Whistling Straits, and Straight Out of Compton had just opened, and it was like, we got to go see this on the big screen. And we went, and in downtown Milwaukee, it was an amazing crowd. The energy was phenomenal, and that's one of the more memorable visits to the cinema we've had. But there's been a bunch of them.
I was really struck by how good the music was. And that's music that I'd heard a lot, as people do, just, in an ambient kind of way in a car or whatever. And it never made an impression on me. And in that setting, as you were saying, the energy of the audience, and a lot of things going on, the tenor of the times, but the music really made a powerful impact on me. I'm totally with these, I know Ryan's got a thing going about virtual golf, and is that the phrase, Ryan? Not virtual golf, but is that what they say?
So. Well, TrackMan,
yeah, TrackMan.
Yeah, and possibly qualifying for a Corn Ferry event via virtual golf. Whatever. There is nothing like the experience of seeing Tiger Woods in person. If anybody can, I would suggest they do it while they can. Any elite golfer, to see what they do with the golf ball. Just like Ryan was talking about before about Brian Watts, under, over, how about through? See live golf if you can. And of course, there's nothing like going to a movie theater. Absolutely nothing.
Okay, just on a side note, and Michael, as Michael would say, if I may, Alan, if I may, gentlemen, as a colleague, but mostly as a fan, can you just write the story of going to see Straight Out of Compton? Because obviously there's more to it, and there's a lot of layers, and I sensed that there was a ton going on. So could you just get together, get your memories together, and write a quick 2,000 word story on it, because it sounds amazing.
There was. I will say this, if you remember in the movie, I don't know if you've seen it, Ryan. I don't know how many of our listeners have seen it, but of course, NWA, they have the song "Fuck the Police," and they get letters from the FBI and all this stuff. And they go to play a concert. I believe it was in Philadelphia, actually, Michael. And before the concert, there's all these old white police officers, and they're lecturing all these dudes in the band, saying, if you play that song, we're going to arrest you. And it's very sort of, in some ways, the climactic moment of the movie. And so it's mid concert, and Dre and Easy are looking at each other, and they're just looking at each other they're just looking should we? And it just, the moment builds and builds. Should we? I don't know. Should we? And then they just launch into the song. And I find that extremely inspiring. And it probably informs my own,
Yeah. I want to know everything.
Yeah.
Two Jewish gentlemen walking into a Straight Out of Compton.
Downtown Milwaukee, yeah.
I mean, downtown Milwaukee. I need to know everything about it. And we could do a podcast on just that. Just that.
No, but I think about that little moment, and of course it's stylized, and who knows if it actually happened in reality, but that moment in the movie, because you get to these forks in the road as writers, and even the Mickelson excerpt from my book that touched off all kinds of stuff, because we're a startup, we were not a giant operation. I had to press the publish button on that story. And I literally hovered the cursor over that for not a minute, 10 seconds. And I was like, I didn't know it was going to get as crazy as it got, but I knew as soon as that story went live that things were going to start happening. And I was like, oh, fuck. All right, boom.
No question.
And it was like it was that in a microcosm, like it was that moment. So I think about that movie, that scene a lot. So
it's
anyway.
really neat.
Okay, maybe it's 10,000
and
words.
lives are going to change.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've tried to end this podcast like 7 times. I think we should actually end it.
If I may.
Right. The listeners are going to learn to dread that phrase. They're probably sitting in a parking lot somewhere. They have something to do, but they're trying to get to the podcast. If I may, no. Anyway.
Especially if they have that thing like I have, like if there's a good song on and you get to your destination, you cannot leave the car until the song. I had it just last night. You can't leave the car until the song is completed. So if they're listening to the pod and they like it in the car, they can't. Of course, these days people just go from one device to another, so it's not so difficult. I guess I'm dating myself, but anyway, thank you for sharing that, Alan. That was very interesting.
This is Alan Shipnuck. That was Michael Bamberger and Ryan French. This was a fire drill. We do them every Sunday. Thank you for listening. We do appreciate your fidelity and your indulgence. We will be back at it next week. We have the Father, Son, and various other things to talk about. So until then, thanks for listening.